everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Alrighty, thank you, my pretend fans. Hello to my real listeners. Hope everyone's having a fantastic week, a fantastic April, a wonderful spring so far. Mine has certainly been interesting, eventful, overwhelming. But hey, that's nothing new in my life, right? Wouldn't know it any other way. Uh, so I think there's been some developments with Tennessee football since the last time that we talked, and the quarterback that was the face of the team, that was the face of the NIL era, basically, that was the 7, $8 million man, private jet flying, Rolex wearing. Superstar, or at least, 5-star prospect is no longer going to be a volunteer, and we are going to talk about that a lot. We got a lot to dive into with that, with the news on it, with my opinions on it, with everything about that situation, and it's particularly relevant today as well because today the spring portal officially opened. Nico is in it. I was just looking at it a few minutes ago. Saw a few new quarterbacks that jumped into the portal. None that were big names. There was a guy I think from East Carolina, the NIU quarterback. Who I don't know if he was the starter last year when they beat Notre Dame, but if he is, that's an interesting prospect. But there should be some options for Tennessee, if nothing else, to add depth at the position. We've also got the draft only another, what, like 8 days away? Is it? Yeah, I guess so. Right? And let's see, we've got soccer for my boys coming up. We've got drama at my work coming up, which that's going to change. We've got a lot of changes coming in the near future in my life. And one of those was actually I said that because I'd been so overwhelmed, I was just going to not worry about the podcast, not worry about the YouTube channel for a while. I had decided that earlier this week, but then I was thinking about it, and this doesn't take that much effort anyway. I mean, I do it, while I'm working, so it's not like it takes away any time I would be spending on anything else. And plus, if you guys have listened, it's kind of therapeutic for me in a lot of ways. Just to talk about, well, sports are important to me, but also just talk about everything in general. If you listen to the show, you kind of know the deal. Excuse me. So I decided I wanted to do an episode today, and I decided it was almost necessary to do an episode today, even though it's not like we have a huge following. I mean, we have to talk about Nico. We have to talk about, if you're a Tennessee football fan, everything right now is centered around the quarterback position. We're going to have a new one for both teams this year. And for Titans fans, that's a reason for excitement. For Vols fans, that's a reason to maybe be a little uncertain. And then I've also, if you've watched the YouTube channel, I did the first 10 picks of my mock draft. Honestly, the reason I did it that way was because I was short on time. That's all I had time to do that day. But I did the first 10 picks of my mock draft. I've actually got the full first round completed, but I haven't been able to record it yet. But I think I'll go over some of the highlights, some of my picks from that, some of the things I disagreed with the experts on TV and on the radio about. And so, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. I'll take a quick break and we'll dive into everything. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So, first things first, I have heard from, we've got a handful of listeners, and I've heard that, from a couple that they kind of missed the TMI segment that I used to do at the beginning of the show, where I just shared something personal about my life, about myself that I normally wouldn't feel comfortable putting out there into the world. And today I've actually got a lot on my mind outside of sports, and that's because of all the uncertainty with my job. Look, most of you, I don't think I've ever said the company I work for on here, just because that doesn't feel right. Um, but most of I mean, most of you guys either know me, or if you don't know me, you've figured it out. But this company is going to shit. There's no two ways about it. It just is. That's happening. Um, and I don't want to get into all of the details, but basically, they are making massive uh, company-wide organizational structural changes to the company. that are only strictly about saving money. There is no added advantage to the customer. There is certainly lots of, it's going to make things worse for the customer and it's going to make things worse for the employees. And it's entirely focused on saving money and, raising the profit margin for those on top. Now, I get that, that's their overall goal is to increase the profit margin, but I've never known of a good business practice that was strictly about saving money, that didn't add any sort of advantage for customers. This does not. This is going to make things a lot worse on the customer. Things are not going to be on time. Things are going to be it's going to be a mess. And anyway, I'm torn about going into the details of the company's stuff. Even though, again, I know I don't have a really huge following here, but I still feel like I don't want to go too far into it. But the point is that, and this is not just, me being an employee and having strictly, this biased perspective. I mean, this is just a fact. What they are doing is they are taking away drivers who are employees and going to a model where drivers will only be contractors, which is what another segment of the company has already done and has already been sued for multiple times, but they keep wiggling out of it. So that basically means that this company, even though you will wear their uniforms, you drive their trucks, you have their logo on everything, they have no liability for you. You are not actually an employee of theirs. You are an employee of an independent trucking company, which they hire. And so they don't have to provide you with any benefits. They don't have to really pay you well. They don't have to give you any sort of health insurance. And again, they don't have any liability if you hurt somebody, even though, again, it's their name on your truck if you run somebody over in it, but they are still not liable. So, anyway, this is the model that they are going to. And so those of us who work for the other portion of the company that is the main, has for the existence of this company been the main portion of the company, the express portion of the company, uh, they're doing away with it basically, and they're just combining express and ground into one. I mean, you know what I'm talking about now. What difference does it make? Um, and ground, they are all hired through independent trucking companies. They don't make as much. They don't have nearly any benefits that we do. I mean, if they have health insurance, it's really barely anything. I mean, I've talked to a lot of them. They're overworked. There aren't the same regulations and laws that protect employees from big companies because they don't work for that company. They work for the trucking company, and the trucking company has lower standards. They also have lower standards for delivering things and getting things to customers on time and making sure that signatures that are required actually get signed and making sure things aren't left on someone's garbage can and making sure, all this stuff. The standards are just significantly lower on the other side. And it's understandable. I mean, these guys aren't getting paid as well. And even for us who still work for this, while it's still a thing, other side of the company, they have taken away one benefit after another from us slowly over the last few months to where it sucks. And it's only going to continue to where eventually they want to essentially wipe out direct employees who are drivers. That's their goal. Um, and anyway, and part of doing that, a lot of these express stations, including our own, are being closed. So now there, I could talk about this for a long time because it's very complicated and there are a lot of details, and I don't know how interested anyone is in hearing all the details, but so I won't go into all the specifics of it. But basically, our station is closing. At first, they told us that there would still be some jobs available if we wanted them, or we would have the option of taking a severance package where we would get paid 1 week for every year we have worked for the company. And even someone like me who's only been here for about 3 years, there's a minimum of 5 years, 5 weeks of severance. So that sounds decent, right? And so I was just waiting for them to find their way to wriggle out of that, which now I know what their way is to wriggle out of that, where they're going to come back to you. This has already happened at other stations, and they will offer you some part-time job that could be 100 miles from where you live, that's not even a driver job. And if you say no, then they don't have to pay you severance because they still offered you a job, so you're not technically being laid off. You also would not qualify for unemployment in that scenario. So this is the company that I work for and that I've been representing. Now I want to make it clear, I love the people I work with. I really like my boss, my direct boss, and I love the work itself. You guys have heard me talk about it. I mean, who wouldn't love getting paid to drive around in the mountains all day? That, all of those primary aspects of this job are still great, but the company itself is going to hell. And now they're taking away, I mean, my this job, this route is not going to exist anymore here in a few weeks. um the original deadline, the date they said they were going to close our station, was the end of June. I said all along I don't think they're going to be able to stick to that, because they're going to be trying to combine this and give this all this stuff to the other side of the company, who are already overworked and underpaid and understaffed, and that's going to be a catastrophe, and it has been. So they're not going to be able to stick to that deadline. But what they are going to try to do now is close our station, yet keep us all working out of a Chattanooga station, which is, another 20, 30 minutes from, well, yeah, it's about 30 minutes from where we are. And so it's another 30 minutes from where this route is. And anyway, so that's just not really going to be a realistic option for me, because I'm getting way off topic. The point is, things are going to hell with this job, and I'm not going to have it much longer. And one of the examples of things going to hell is because the station is closing and because they continue to make the job worse. We've been having people quit left and right, understandably. So we've been understaffed for a while. And as a part of that, we've all been required to work our off days. See, I am scheduled for 10-hour, I'm a 4 by 10, which means I am actually supposed to work 4 10-hour days, and my off day is Wednesday. Well, because we've been so understaffed, all of us who are 4 by 10s have been working our off days for months now, or almost since this came down the pipe a couple months ago. Or, well, yeah, I guess since then. And now, on top of that, they are trying to mandate us to work Saturdays. Not every Saturday, but rotating, working Saturdays, not even in our own station, but in the Chattanooga station. And so this week, I would be the one who was expected, after they just announced this, by the way, last Friday, and then expected the first people on the list, the lowest in seniority, to just jump and work that Saturday, the very next day after they announced this poor shit. And yeah, I mean, one guy, at least that I know, a friend of mine who's lower than me on the seniority list, did. He had to give up his, the next day he had to go work. Anyway, so I am scheduled to work this weekend. I actually got a friend of mine who's probably listening right now. He's a listener to the show. He was going to be willing to switch weekends with me because my kids are playing soccer this Saturday. Usually their games are on Sunday, but this week it's on a Saturday. Of course, that's the way it works out. Um, and also because I am just so overwhelmed. You guys know I'm almost finished with this degree, but I'm behind right now on my schoolwork in this class because I've been working so constantly and trying to do everything with the kids and still, have enjoy their childhood as much as I can, and work 50 hours a week. And it's just been overwhelming. So anyway, now you tell me that on top of all that, you want me to work an additional day, and not only is it the day my kids are playing soccer, but the next day is Sunday. So basically, I would be working 6 days this week, at least five of those 10-hour days, and I would have no time to do my schoolwork, which was going to be either, usually it's Wednesday, but now it's moved to the weekend. I would have no time to get caught up on that. The only choice I would have would be on Easter Sunday to not take my kids to church or any sort of events, but to pass them off to somebody else. Get no time to spend with them on Sunday. Obviously, have no time to spend with them on Saturday, but to spend all of that time just trying to get caught up on schoolwork while also at the same time looking for a new job. And so the alternative was to say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. And that's what I said. And so the penalty for doing that is you get a disciplinary letter. And, I told my boss, I'm sorry. I don't want to make you look bad in this. I don't want to, make it harder on anybody, but I'm not doing it. And, if the choice is between me missing my kids' soccer games, which you guys know how important all this stuff is to me. They're only this young once. We only get to do these things, while we can. I'm not gonna miss it for a job I'm not gonna have for a few weeks. I'm also not going to miss, even though I'm not big on Easter, you guys know I'm not big on church or any of that, but it's still a big deal to them. I'm not going to miss out on that stuff to contribute more to this company that just continues to fuck us as hard as possible. I'm sorry. And so if it's between me missing their soccer game, having to spend my entire Easter Sunday just trying to get caught up on schoolwork while I send them off to do something else with grandparents, I guess, and not getting to spend any time with them this weekend. And still, really, even if I did it all Sunday, probably really not having enough time to get completely caught up and still do some job searching, which I'm trying to do as much as I can. Or to take a disciplinary warning letter from a job I'm not even going to fucking have in a few weeks, well, that's not really that much of a decision. And again, I don't, I'm sorry to my boss. I don't want him to look bad. I fully take responsibility. I do like him, but that's just the way it is. I mean, this is an easy choice for me, really. And look, they're not going to, I mean, I have seen people do some things at this job that the one guy in particular should have been fired literally more times than I can count. And had another just absurd event a few weeks ago. But they're not going to, they didn't even fire, they haven't even, wouldn't even fire you even before we were this short-handed. They're not going to do anything now. I mean, I'll take that letter that I'm never actually going to read, shove it up your ass. That's fine. So anyway, that's kind of what's on my mind right now. And I still, just being the person I am, I'm gonna feel a little bit conflicted, a little bit guilty about it, I guess, just because I do like my boss, I do like the people I work with, and I hope they don't pour some guilt trip bullshit onto me for not working this sixth day. But in the end, that's not gonna change anything. It's just I can't do it. I am so far beyond overwhelmed right now that it's killing me. And on top of all of that, all of these tasks and stress and never-ending to-do lists makes me completely unable to actually spend any quality time with my children, which in the end is the most important thing. So again, maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of this than it is, but just another example of how frustrating things have become with this company. I mean, they've taken away the best aspects of our overtime. They've taken away many of our benefits. They've taken away, and now they're going to be completely taking the jobs away pretty soon. And so, I'm going to be I will miss the job itself. I will miss this work and driving around in the mountains all day, getting to do a podcast, getting to listen to whatever, getting to do, I will miss this. I have no doubt about that. But I will certainly not feel anything but relieved to no longer be representing and being a part of this company. So, all that being said, that's a lot more time than I planned on spending about that. Let's talk about some sports. I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So just to finish, I don't think I finished that thought about I mentioned I had a friend who I work with that is also a listener of the show who had agreed to be probably willing to switch Saturdays with me, but apparently when that was brought up, that is not allowed. Although it makes no sense because we were told that it would be allowed if someone was willing to volunteer for one of these days, then that would take you off the list for that week, or that would, yeah, that would mean you would not have to work. But then once we actually, or anyway, apparently now it's not. So whatever. But Nico Iamaliava is now no longer a member of the Tennessee Volunteers. And man, I mean, obviously, I could spend the rest of the time. That I have for the show talking about this, and I'll probably spend a good portion of it talking about this because there are just so many sides to this, man. And here's my experience with it. So we had heard rumblings of it back in December when the main real transfer portal was about to open, or that he was unhappy. But at that point, we were told that it was all about he wanted us to improve the roster, specifically the offensive line. And so apparently, he or his dad or his team or whoever is basically trying to sort of hold us hostage a little bit with the threat of transfer to now have some influence over the roster. Okay, that's irritating enough, but we're going to do what we need to do to improve the offensive line no matter what he thinks. So I think because of that, it didn't really end up being that big of a deal that time. And so then fast forward to April. We are preparing for the spring game. My kids and I are all going. It's actually Saturday morning, and we started to hear on Friday that there's some stuff going on that apparently now Nico is asking for more money. And my thing was, I don't know the details of this, but what I do know is that it's Tennessee football. Money is not an issue. Let's just go ahead and pay him and move forward. That was my initial thought on it. Well, then Saturday morning comes along, and that's when we find out that Nico Iamaliava will no longer be a part of this team. He had skipped practice the day before the spring game in the middle of April. Your starting quarterback, your five-star leader of the team, is pulling this bullshit all to get more money. So now it's not about helping the team. It's not about building the roster. It's about nothing but more money. And once I heard some of the details of it, I didn't blame us. I didn't blame Josh Heupel, Danny White, Tennessee, all for making the decision they did. I mean, there's got to be a point where you say, okay, this dude, this Nico Senior, cannot have this much influence over our program. Josh Heupel said it best, most concisely, and summarized the whole situation by saying no one is bigger than the power T. And that's really what it comes down to. This guy was trying to consistently hold the entire team hostage by threatening to take away our starting quarterback if he didn't get better offensive linemen, if he didn't now get more money, which you can argue about whether or not he deserved it. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I don't know. I mean, what he deserves is what the market will pay him. Will somebody pay him $4 million? Doesn't look that way right now. But you had the guy transfer into Duke getting 4 million. You had these high school recruits getting more than that amount. And so he's thinking, I had a pretty good year as a starter last year. And so I want more. And when I say he, again, this is his team, and that's another topic as well. He and his people say, I had a pretty good year. I helped lead us to the college football playoffs last year. I want more money. And they finally just said, and if I don't get it, I'm going to transfer. And finally, the Tennessee decision makers just said, "No, we can't do this. This is too much. We can't continuously be." I mean, and it would have been one thing, honestly, if it would have been the next year. Like he pulled this bullshit last year where he's threatening to transfer if we don't give him more money or if we don't improve the offensive line or whatever. And so then that happens, or and we move on. And then the next year he's got more demands. That even would have been one thing. But it wasn't even that. It was a few months later. Now he's got more demands in April, in the middle of April. When all the spring football is done, when you're the day before or 2 days before the spring game, before the orange and white game, now's when you're going to try to make this move. And they just finally called him on his bluff and said, "We can't keep this up." I mean, the thinking had to be, what's next? It's not a matter of money. I mean, $4 million is nothing to Tennessee football. What really this came down to was them having to draw a line in the sand and say, listen, if he's going to make this demand in the winter transfer portal, and then he's going to make a demand in the spring transfer portal, and then he's going to make another demand, we assume, come the next winter portal. And we just cannot continue to live like this and have this guy who has no position on our football team, in our organization, in our school, having say over roster, trying to have say over roster construction, trying to have say over how much money we're paying. And if we don't acquiesce to them, they're going to take away our starting quarterback. We just can't keep this up. And so they made the decision. And now I have also heard differing reports as to who made the final decision. Was it Nico? Was it the Vols, I don't know, but it seems like, from from most sources agree that it was the Vols who finally called his bluff and said, you know what, good luck to you. We can't do this anymore. And the way that has been received by the national media and most of the media at large is basically it seems like everyone's taking Tennessee's side and saying good for us, and saying it's a good thing someone finally drew a line in the sand. And um, sorry, I got distracted for a second there. But it basically seems like Nico is kind of coming away from this looking like the bad guy. Now, here's another part of this. I've heard uh, what everyone agrees upon is that, and you heard Paul Feinbaum say it. Lots of people have said it, and there's no denying it's clear. This is a landmark situation, a landmark event in determining the future of what college football will look like moving forward. This was the first time a major college football player had tried to pull an NFL style holdout with threatening to go to the portal. And in response to it, this was, as far as I know, the first time a major college football program had said enough is enough and not acquiesced to a starting quarterback, a high profile starting quarterback. And so, in the end, we all know that it's the structure that's really to blame. There are no rules to this shit. We've all been talking about this for years. About, I have been of the mindset for a long time that yes, players deserve a piece of the multi-billion dollar uh, industry that is built upon their efforts and their images and all that. But there have to be some sort of rules in place. The NCAA tried to put some rules in place when they first said this was okay, but they were ridiculous. One of those rules said you could not use it as a recruiting tool. I mean, come on. If that's not the most laughable thing in the world, I don't know what is. Of course, that's what everybody's going to do. That's what it is. And so the NCAA is just a joke. I've been saying for a very long time that college football needs to break off and just be its own thing. And it's getting closer to doing that because the NCAA has no real authority anymore. The NCAA cannot control college football. They certainly cannot control NIL. It's laughable. And so I keep hearing these conversations about, well, who's to blame? Who should what really who has the power now? What you keep hearing is there needs to be collective bargaining, right? Now I'm all for that. I think that's a great thing. I think that should exist in every industry. But the problem with this is, with whom are we collectively bargaining? Let's say you get a union for college football players. Who's on the other side? We don't know. The NCAA? Come on. Nobody's listening to them. They don't have any real authority anymore. Is it the college football? Is it the conference commissioners? They definitely have more authority than the NCAA, but only within their own conferences. There's no combined union of conference. That's what there needs to really be. And really, the entity that it seems like has more influence and more control over this than anyone is the one that no one else talks about, and that's Disney. I mean, who is it that actually decides who plays for the national championship? It's not the NCAA. It's not the conference commissioners. It's not the Associated Press. It's ESPN. They are the ones who essentially own the college football playoff. So they are the ones who shape everyone's opinions. They are the ones who determine what's news and what's not. They are the ones with really more authority in this than anyone. And so it's my opinion that Disney, the SEC, the Big Ten, and if any of the other big conferences are, still in existence or, have the authority, the influence to do it, should all finally find some way to come together and say, okay, this is now CFB. We are no longer a part of the NCAA. This is clearly not an amateur sport anymore and hasn't been for a long time, and just form their own thing. And then you can create a players' union where there can be collective bargaining. And then we will at least know who's in charge and we can have structure to this stuff. We can have rules. We can have it where players can't just at any moment hold their entire team, school, coach, everybody hostage and with the threat of transferring anytime they want. And so there again, there are so many angles to this, but another thing that I think is worth noting is even though, look, I'm going to say I don't hate Nico. I really don't. I do not feel about him, for example, the way I feel and felt about Lane Kiffin. I still look at Nico as being somewhat of, I mean, he's a 20-year-old kid. And now I heard Dan Orlovsky, for instance, on, might have been First Take or something the other day, talking about how basically Nico doesn't deserve any blame here. It's his dad, it's his representatives, it's the NCAA. Everybody else is to blame. This kid is just a kid. I do not agree with that because in the end, it's not his dad who's the one putting his name in the transfer portal. It's not his dad who's going out there and taking snaps. It's not his dad who's showing up or not showing up for practice. It's not his dad whose name is attached to all of this. It's not his dad who's getting millions of dollars for his efforts. It's him. He is a 20-year-old multimillionaire legal adult. So at some point, he's going to have to stand up and say, look, if this even is his dad, for all we know, this could be more Nico than we think. Everybody wants to put the blame on his dad and, this sort of agent that they have, but we really don't know. We're just assuming that he's being led astray. It really could be more him than we realize. But with the assumption being that it's his dad mostly calling the shots and Nico's just kind of following what he's doing, at some point he's going to have to grow a pair and realize you are leading me in the wrong direction. I am a 20-year-old adult. I'm a multimillionaire, and this is my name that's now being dragged through the mud. This is my team that I have now abandoned. This is my future that is now completely in jeopardy. He was going to be a first round pick if he would have just played a decent year next year with Tennessee. He was going to make $2.5 million if he would have just stayed with Tennessee last year. He would have made that much money and would have been a first round pick in the NFL draft. Now, what does his future hold? So, even though I agree that it probably is more the grown adults making these decisions and he's just being led astray, at some point, he would have had to say, no, this doesn't feel right to me. This is my name. This is my future. This is my money. This is me. It's not your thing. And I don't feel like this is the right direction anymore. So I do not at all like this idea of just freeing Nico from any blame in this. I don't like that because in the end, it does fall squarely on his shoulders. It's his name in the transfer portal, not his dad's, not his agent's. And so I do think he deserves at least a large amount of the blame for how this works, even if he's not the one devising the plans and doing all this stuff behind the scenes. He's the one who really has the say. It's his name. It's his game. It's his money. So anyway, and now with the way things look, now it could be totally different by a few hours from now. The transfer portal, the spring window opened today. Maybe Oregon, who everybody's loving on Dan Lanning lately for apparently calling Josh Heupel and telling him that Nico's people were shopping him. I don't know how I feel about that because if anything, it feels like he may have had an ulterior motive with it. But I've always liked Dan Lanning as a coach anyway. But I feel like a lot of people are kind of going overboard with the praise of him in this whole situation. And so my point is that this could look completely different by the end of today. Maybe he is at Oregon. Maybe he is at USC. Maybe he ends up at Notre Dame making 4.5 million. But the way it looks right now, and from everything we've heard, it seems like he's now headed for a lesser program. From what I've heard, even Tulane right now is not really interested in him, certainly not at the price tag, and nobody's interested in him at the price tag. USC has said they have no interest. Oregon has claimed they have no interest. Ohio State, Notre Dame, UCLA has been tied to him, but what they've been putting out there is that they don't have any interest unless he significantly drops his price. So the way it's looking right now is that this kid who really didn't want to transfer in the first place, from the way it seems to me, he liked being at Tennessee. He committed to Tennessee for a reason. He wanted to continue. What the hell is this idiot just went in between two lanes? Um, I don't think he wanted to transfer. He just, this was a power play to try to get more money. So now instead of being at the school, at the team he wanted to be with the coach he wanted to learn from, making $2.5 million at a major college football program that's going to again be a playoff contender, that's going to again be a contender in the SEC, and having the opportunity to play well and become a first round pick next year. He's now, it looks like, going to end up at a lesser program, probably a group of five team, making significantly less money. And unless he takes some huge steps forward, his draft stock has also taken a hit. Now, it's not a huge hit because there's still a lot to happen between now and then, and everything will be determined by how he actually plays. But this is something everybody's going to remember. This is going to be a question he's going to be asked in every single team interview when he begins the draft process. So, really, this worked out about as poorly as it could have for Nico. And that sucks. But, well, and again, that's the way it looks right now. It could be totally different. Maybe Bill Belichick is bluffing and maybe North Carolina does go get it. Maybe he does go get to be coached by the greatest NFL coach of all time and things work out great for him. We don't know. This is just all projecting based on what we're hearing and the way things look right now. But the way things look right now, it looks pretty friggin' bleak for Nico. And as far as the Vols, you know what? I'll dive into that in the next segment. Let me take a quick break. Alrighty, hey friends, back again. So, as far as the Vols situation right now, things don't look great either way. And Heather Dinich said it, on national TV last night, I think it was, that really there are no winners in this situation the way it looks right now. Mm, I personally have been a big fan of George McIntyre's for a long time, and we left the spring game at halftime because the kids were just, I don't know, they my daughter, she's still only 4 and she's not a real football fan anyway. She just likes being a part of things and I don't want to leave her out of stuff. Excuse me, but she was being pretty fussy and even Jack was being a little fussy and it was just I was already in kind of a bad mood as I'm sure a lot of people were given that we just learned that morning that we lost our starting quarterback and so we ended up leaving the game at halftime, but I did get to see a lot of a lot of what you will, the little bit you really can gather from just a spring scrimmage game. And I'll tell you, George McIntyre in that game looked outstanding. I mean, he made some throws that were wonderful. And this would not be the first time that a true freshman starts for a major program. I mean, it's not ideal, but he might be the best option on the roster right now. I liked Jake Merklinger. I never loved him as a prospect, but I liked him. And from what I saw in the first half, McIntyre was definitely the better option. But again, this is just a spring scrimmage. I mean, you're only going to see so much. You can't really learn much from it. And from everything I saw and read and watched afterwards, it sounds like Merklinger really picked it up in the second half of the game as well. Um, but we've got these two high 4-star players, which McIntyre at one point when he was a junior was a 5-star. He fell after he had an injury and missed all the recruiting camps and all that stuff. And then I guess he must have not had a spectacular senior season because he just continued to fall a little bit down the rankings. But this guy has tons of talent. He's got size, athleticism, a wonderful arm. I mean, he's good. Merklinger, sort of the same kind of thing. Big, athletic, strong arm. Now, but the assumption is, we can't go into the season with only two scholarship quarterbacks, the oldest of them being a redshirt freshman, and the other one being a true freshman. So we're going to go get somebody in the transfer portal. Now, my assumption all along has been that some other unexpected name will be popping up in the portal probably today, because say what you want about Tennessee, and I know that a lot of Tennessee fans are a little bit over the top and can be delusional, and sometimes I don't even like being associated with our fan base in some ways, but you cannot deny, no matter how you look at it, that the starting quarterback at the University of Tennessee has got to be one of the top 10, 15 most desirable jobs in college football, or for a quarterback. That position at the University of Tennessee with Josh Heupel, with the talent around you, at a big time name brand SEC school, that's a desirable job. So I guarantee you that every second string quarterback outside of the SEC, because it can't be a in conference transfer in the spring window, but every second string quarterback in the country, when they heard that news outside of the SEC, started thinking. And so I'm assuming that there's going to be somebody unexpected jump into the portal. Now, it could be, whoever's the second string quarterback at Ohio State or USC or Notre Dame, or it could be somebody from a smaller school. I don't know. But I'm assuming that that's what's going to happen. We've already apparently been in contact with guys. As soon as this stuff started, we started reaching out to the other quarterbacks to gauge interest and to start trying to, find who we could. So I'm assuming that there will be another surprise transfer, not to the degree of Nico Iamaleava, five-star, famous multimillionaire, big-time face of NIL quarterback, but there will be another surprise transfer. Now, unfortunately, it can't be Jaden Rashada, who's transferring from Georgia, because again, the SEC thing. Right now, he would be the best option for us, but it's not a possibility. Excuse me. But I'm assuming that there will be someone jump in the portal that no one had really been expecting until this Nico thing happened, until the starting job at the University of Tennessee opened up. Um, and look, what this means for next year, who knows? But who knows? I mean, honestly, everything about how next year was going to turn out was entirely dependent upon Nico needed to be better. He was not good enough to get us where we want to be last year. He wasn't bad. He wasn't great. Now, he was a redshirt freshman, only his second year in college, and so there was reason to believe that he will take another step forward. But if we wanted to really do anything this year beyond what we did last year, which would be, maybe getting to the SEC championship, maybe getting to the second round of the playoffs, it was all going to hinge on better quarterback play. And now Nico is gone. And so this leaves us in a situation where, are we going to be able to find anybody better? That feels unlikely. But look, I'm not betting against Josh Heupel, especially when it comes to that position. Let's not forget that this is the same guy who won 10 regular season games, 11 games in his second season after this program was in the toilet as far as it has ever been 2 years prior. This is the same guy that took two transfer quarterbacks. The first one gets injured. The second one, who was, no one was talking about this guy, takes over. And until he got hurt, was the like 10th game of the season, was the favorite for the Heisman. And obviously that's Hendon Hooker. So I'm not going to count again. I'm not going to bet against Josh Heupel's ability to go find a talented quarterback in the transfer portal. Another thing that's worth mentioning here, excuse me, is if you watch the Tennessee offense last year, it was different. It was not, and the biggest, most obvious difference was the speed. That turbo, hyper speed offense that had almost one Hendon Hooker, the Heisman, that had come to define Tennessee football under Josh Heupel was just not there. And at first, you wondered if, well, maybe it's because our first big game was on the road at Oklahoma against a really good team, against a really good defense, with a young quarterback, his first SEC start. And so you just don't want to move too fast. But then it just continued. It was still a no huddle offense, but it just seemed like for some reason, we're not moving nearly as fast. And that was a big part of our offense. That was a big part of what kept defenses off guard. And you had to wonder, is is Nico just not capable of running the offense at the speed it's supposed to go? And I still don't know. I don't know why that wasn't reported on or talked about enough last year. I mean, we did hear it talked about in the sense of like, especially after that Oklahoma game, people were kind of criticizing Heupel for being too conservative, which I thought was ridiculous. I mean, we did what we were supposed to do to win the game, but it was never really talked about in the sense of why are we not running the hyper speed offense anymore? We're still moving fast, but we're not one of the fastest teams in the country like we usually are. And that's a big part of what had made this offense special and unstoppable was keeping defenses off balance. And you just had to wonder, is Nico not able to run it at the speed it's supposed to go? Excuse me. Now, I don't know, but that seems like the most obvious answer is that the quarterback change happened. This is a young quarterback. The speed has slowed down a lot. That's the most obvious answer is that for whatever reason, he's not really capable of running this offense the way Hendon Hooker did, or even the way Joe Milton did. And so maybe we end up in a better situation with a 3-star transfer quarterback out of Virginia Tech who nobody's talking about. I am not going to bet against Josh Heupel and his ability to go find a quarterback. Now, another obvious big problem here is that it's the middle of friggin' April. So, can you get someone in that quickly and get him to learn the offense and learn his teammates, get chemistry with the receivers and everything that you need by September? I don't know, man. That's a tough task. That is a really tough task. But again, if there's anybody that I would want doing it, it would be Josh Heupel. So I don't know what to expect out of this year. No one does right now because we don't even know who our quarterback's going to be. And the only two that we really have on the roster on scholarship are both talented, but both really young, and neither one really probably ready to start right now. So everything's up in the air for the Vols this year, but I will never, ever bet against Josh Heupel. I'm going to take another quick break and I'll be right back. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So, honestly, we don't have enough time left, and I was kind of afraid this might happen to go over the mock draft the way that I wanted to. But check it out on the YouTube channel. I've got the first 10 picks. Maybe I'll some way, somehow be able to squeeze out some time to do another video this weekend. I mean, you guys heard me talk about my current to-do list and current situation and how overwhelmed I am. But if nothing else, I'll do another episode on the podcast where we can go over all the picks on my mock draft. Because look, I don't. I mean, you guys know I don't toot my own horn very often, but there are some things I know, and the draft is one of them. I've always been a huge draft nerd. I've always been a huge fan of the draft, and also got a theory about that as far as like fan team people who are fans of teams that are not always good, I think end up being bigger fans of the draft because we're usually picking higher and because we're always looking to rebuild and improve. And, that's been the Titans for the last couple of decades, really, with the exception of a few years under Mike Vrabel. But now here we are. The pick is clear. I am very, very grateful that at least at the moment, it feels as though they have cut out this bullshit about trying to raise the price and trade the pick because Cam Ward is the pick. Excuse me. That's it. That decision should have already been made. I think it probably has been. Um, but yeah, that's it. We need a quarterback. He's really the only one in this draft that I think is a consensus, top 10 pick kind of quarterback. Go get him. Like, and I've talked about, I love this kid from the interviews, from what I've watched from him. I've just grown to love him even more. I'm very excited about what he could be as a Tennessee Titan and what this could mean for the future of the Titans. Um, Now, Shador Sanders and the other quarterbacks in this draft, that's a whole other conversation, which I wish I had more time to dive into today. But I don't know. Maybe depending on how things go, maybe I can try to do another episode tomorrow that's just dedicated to the draft. Excuse me. Well, again, we'll see how everything goes. Or if I am able to, maybe I can get another thing up on the podcast where or on the YouTube channel where we talk about it. We'll see. Um, but we also have basketball playoffs going on right now. You guys know I'm a Lakers fan, which I've always said I'm kind of just a leftover Kobe fan because with everything else, I'm local. Like I believe that there is a reason why these teams have the names of cities and states, as part of their organizations. Why they are called the Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Volunteers, and all that. There's a reason why this stuff is geographically associated. And so I've always believed that, unless you grew up in a household that's different or you're from somewhere else, it just makes sense to me that, you should root for the team that is representative of your area. But the one exception for me is the Lakers, and that's just because I was such a huge Kobe Bryant fan when I was a kid, and I've kind of just continued to be a leftover Lakers fan. And man, they look outstanding. I think things worked out pretty well for them as far as the draw because I do think they will be better against the Timberwolves in the first round than they would have been against the Warriors. But again, what I was getting at is I've also sort of kind of been a Memphis Grizzlies fan because even though actually Atlanta would be closer to me, I'm not going to root for the Hawks. I have enough hard enough time rooting for the Braves just because I don't like Georgia. Um, but I'm not going to root for the Hawks. And at least Memphis is in the state of Tennessee. But man, John Morant has just been turning me off so much lately. They fired Taylor Jenkins at a weird time with 10 games left, a coach I liked. And they just seem like they are an organization that it's hard to root for them right now. But man, they put up a hell of a game against the Warriors last night. Now, I did win some money on that one because I had parlays that were the Warriors to win by 4.5, Steph to score 30, and Jimmy Butler to have 25, and so that paid off really well. So I was, even though I'm sort of a halfway Grizzlies fan, I ended up rooting for the Warriors in that one. Um, but I do think that the Warriors will still, or excuse me, that the Grizzlies will still win in the other play-in game. Which, by the way, the Mavericks are underdogs against Sacramento in that game. I think I'm going to take Dallas in that one. I know that that's a whole cluster F of an organization right now, but Anthony Davis is going to be the best player on the floor. And I'm just surprised that from what I've seen, the Mavericks have been like a 5-point underdog in that game. Unless I'm missing something, unless they have other injuries that I'm not aware of or something, I'm surprised at that one. So there'll be my little betting tip for the day. But things look pretty good for the Lakers right now. They are on the other side of the bracket from the Thunder, which, by the way, the Lakers beat the Thunder like a week and a half ago and then would have beaten them again had Luca not been ejected on that ridiculous second technical. They had all the momentum. They were up in the fourth quarter, or it might have been tied, but they had all the momentum. And then Luca gets ejected when he'd been unstoppable on that bullshit technical that ended up being rescinded for all that counts for after the game's already lost. But I don't think Oklahoma City's as invulnerable as everyone else does. And it also seems to have worked out pretty well for the Warriors because even though Houston's really talented, I kind of feel the same way it seems like most people do about them, which is they're still too young to really be a playoff contender. So I'm expecting it to be Lakers and Warriors in the second round anyway. Um, But anyway, there's a lot of I'm running out of time. Don't have time to get into any more NFL or NBA stuff. But I hope everyone has had a fantastic spring so far. I hope you continue to have a fantastic week. Like I said, I'll try to maybe hop back on and do another episode that's dedicated to the mock draft if I'm able to tomorrow. But if nothing else, just continue to be a good person, do your best, and I'll talk to you again soon. All right, love you. Bye.